Video game publishers use their legions of lawyers to lock down their most iconic characters and franchises so other developers can't copy them. We've all seen how Nintendo gets fan games taken down to protect their copyrights, and some companies go even further. It's not enough to just guard their characters. These are video game mechanics nobody can use. Of course, keep in mind we're not patent lawyers or anything like that, but we will link all of our research in the description down below. Starting off at number 15, an obvious one, the Nemesis system from Shadow of Mordor. It's one of the best examples of a video game mechanic that's patented. It's a distinct feature that we've never really seen in other games. There's a reason for that. Warner Brothers Entertainment actually has a patent for the Nemesis system that won't expire until 2036. So if you want to make your own Nemesis system video game, you'll have to wait a long time. So let's back up though. There's a lot we need to talk about here. The Nemesis system was first introduced in, like I said, Shadow of Mordor, and it's basically the biggest reason to replay the game. The Nemesis system is still ridiculously fun. Instead of killing off special named orc enemies, they'd return with new bonuses and weaknesses based on how your hero defeated them. You know, throw them into a burning fire, they might return all burnt up with cool scars and an immunity to fire. Maybe cut off one of their limbs to finish them off, they'll return more angry with a spike for an arm or their arm strapped back on. You know, these events would occur kind of randomly, so you'd never know when your nemesis might return for another showdown.
You seem skilled in the craft of war talk. I see it in your bearing, but I know all of the craft.
It's a seamless and incredibly rewarding system that's unlike anything else really out there. And the only other game to really feature it is the sequel, Shadow of War. That's all we've got. I mean, just think of how amazing a system like this would be in a Batman game. You know, a lowly thug returns to menace Batman, becoming more powerful and theming their supervillain gimmick on your actions. That's exactly what developers at Monolith had in mind for their canceled game codenamed Project Apollo. That project morphed into Shadow of Mordor, but we'd still love to see a new Bat game, or really any game with these types of systems. Next, over at number 14, Nintendo, of course, is the king of enforcing their copyrights, and their latest legal action is all about Pokeballs from Pokemon. Nintendo is suing the Pokemon with Guns game, Palworld. It isn't about the Pokemon-like designs or the matching concept, because Pokemon and Palworld are actually pretty far apart when it comes to their basic gameplay. If you play it, you understand. One game is a light RPG, and the other is like a hardcore online co-op survival game. What it really comes down to here is the Pokeballs. This is where video game mechanic patents get ugly. This is also the point where we have to admit something. Like I said at the start, we are not patent lawyers here at GameRanks. We're scratching the surface of patent infringement law and just trying to make sense of it like cavemen painting pictures of lightning. You know, it's all very big and scary stuff. So here's the thing about patents as we understand them. Any game company can patent a game mechanic, but actually enforcing these patents is notoriously difficult. A publisher can only patent the very specific look and feel of a unique game feature, right? They can't patent the concept itself. The idea of a tiny ball that captures monsters can't be strictly patented, but the very specific mechanics used can be. That's why Nintendo seemingly is suing the developers of Palworld. It isn't the concept of Pokeballs that Palworld is allegedly stealing, it's the exact mechanics of using those Pokeballs, specifically from Pokemon Legends Arceus. Yeah, Pokemon Legends isn't your average Pokemon RPG. In this game, your trainer is free to run around the field, tossing Pokeballs to catch the Pokemon in like real time. So after catching a Pokemon, you'll be able to take it out and run around with it, attacking other Pokemon in auto battles. So if you've played Palworld, you're already going to see some similarities in these very specific mechanics. And when you really dig deep into the lawsuit against Palworld, it seems the Pokemon Legend Connections is like their lawyer's smoking gun. We don't know how the lawsuit will ultimately pan out, really. All we know is that tossing Pokeballs has somehow become one of the more contentious issues in gaming law. Now, next at number 13, we hit some bangers with the Nemesis system and Pokeballs, but who remembers dual reality? Does that, anybody? So this is an interesting little concept patented by Bloober Team, the developers that jumped at the chance to remake Silent Hill 2, of course, now in 2024. Dual reality is from The Medium, and it kind of feels like an early audition for the Silent Hill grand stage, right? This game mechanic sends the player character into two worlds at the same time, splitting the image so you can explore the real world and a spooky afterlife. So each world has its own challenges, so you'd need to navigate both simultaneously to solve these intricate puzzles and explore the environments. Take one look at this concept and it appears to be kind of a twist on Silent Hill's rusty Otherworld. The big difference is that you'd explore both worlds at the same time here, seamlessly, instead of just transitioning from one to the other. Bloober Team, at the time, caught a lot of heat for patenting what was essentially seemed like a ripoff of Silent Hill concepts, and it got worse when the developer basically threatened to sue anyone that used that concept. Later, the same developers admitted that they'd never actually sue anyone in the Reddit AMA, which is definitely a step in the right direction. The big problem with this concept isn't that it's derivative. The game mechanic just doesn't work all that well. It was probably one of the cooler parts of The Medium, but I think it just comes down to the simple fact that The Medium is just an okay game. It didn't really blow the doors down off of anything. Silent Hill 2 is definitely leagues better at this point. If Bloober ever works with Konami again, we actually would love to see Silent Hill use this dual reality with this thing that is already kind of Silent Hill-y. It makes sense. Next, at number 12, not all developers threatened to sue over patents, and the ping system patented by EA wasn't filed to block other developers from using the idea, apparently. Apex Legends introduced this incredibly useful and easy and intuitive ping system.
Let's go this way. Pay attention. Let's defend here. Listen up.
So by pressing a button in the game, players could mark locations, other players, items, objectives for their team. You'll find this feature in lots of modern games, Overwatch 2, Valorant, whatever. The ping system has become ubiquitous, and it existed far longer than Apex Legends. Apex Legends and the patent didn't invent pings, they turned pings into an accessibility feature. So for gamers that can't or don't want to use voice chat, the ping system is an incredibly useful accessibility tool for communication that just makes teamwork so much easier. And even if you're talking to friends, the ping system allows players to give instructions in a pretty precise way. And instead of just jealously guarding their improvements, the ping system patent is actually totally free for use by other developers as part of an accessibility pledge by EA. This system apparently discourages toxicity in online games by taking away barriers of communications for players of all different levels. At least if you remember to use the ping system. From our time at Apex Legends, the ping system really did feel like an awesome innovation. It's just a well-done version of a ping system. It's easy to use and integrated into every aspect of the game. So why create a patent filing after all? Take one look at the patent and you'll see. The filing includes specific information about how the mechanic works in pretty excruciating detail. Essentially, any developer can look at this patent and use it as a blueprint for creating their own ping system. It's literally the opposite of every other game mechanic on our list. We had to talk about it here.
Mozambique here. Shotgun ammo here.
Next at number 11, Tears of the Kingdom is a game just so chock full of cool inspiration. There are many patents filed for its mechanics actually, but the most important for our purposes has to be Ultra Hand. These game mechanics give our hero Link the ability to grab objects and combine them, making pretty crazy vehicles and deadly weird machines. All is done thanks to this Ultra Hand. The ability to pick things up, manipulate them, and then glue these objects together is just what makes it so unique. This isn't just a Half-Life 2 gravity gun. Like, Ultra Hand gives players a lot of creativity, near limitless. You can build a bridge to cross a gap, you can attach a carriage to your horse to transport characters, or glue cannons to a spike and make a turret, make weird vehicles, robots. You've probably seen things go viral. And nobody is going to steal Ultra Hand anytime soon, and it isn't because there's a patent in place. It's for the simple reason that very few developers in the world could really implement a gameplay mechanic this complex into their games. We've talked about it before. Right now, it feels like a lot of AAA games don't want to experiment as much. I don't think we're gonna find something like Ultra Hand in the next Call of Duty because they just wouldn't be able to support it. Now, the only reason Tears of the Kingdom can do it is because the developers at Nintendo are working from this established world, right? We already have Breath of the Wild with the map and thousands of in-game items. That's all established. So the developers had a unique opportunity to create something pretty special. Ultra Hand is a legendary gameplay mechanic that nobody else can use, really just because it's too damn difficult to add to your average game. This is just intense. Systems-wise, from a technical standpoint, Ultra Hand, its execution has always just been so impressive to see. Next at number 10, the humble loading screen. Now, you may remember them, but now they're probably extinct, mostly thanks to SSDs, but once upon a time, players had to sit and wait while games loaded for quite a while, sometimes minutes. The developers of Ridge Racer solved this problem by introducing mini-games to loading screens. While the game loaded, players were treated to a game of Galaxian. Very cute, but an infamous patent for a very simple reason. It's a great idea. Lots of people wanted to add mini-games to their loading screens, and Ridge Racer wasn't the only Namco game with mini-games. Another notable example comes from the Budokai series on PS2. The patent was originally approved in 1995. 20 years later, it expired in 2015, and indie developers celebrated. When loading screen minigames were released from video game patent jail, indie developers threw together the loading screen jam to do everything we weren't allowed to do before. So sometimes patents help grow knowledge in the community, like the ping system we mentioned, and sometimes they stifle creativity in everybody else. This is one patent we're happy to see expire. Even if it's a solution for a problem that doesn't really exist as much anymore, load times aren't usually the worst, but man, I'm old enough to remember that when people realized that this was like news, this was an actual thing, we were all so pissed that we couldn't just have loading screen games in all of our games. Different times, different problems. Next at number 9, Mario Wonder remixed our expectations with these new power-ups and these cool new gimmicks in every single stage. There's so much new in Mario Wonder, we almost forgot about the subject of this next Nintendo patent. It's the ghost form. So after losing a life in Super Mario Bros. Wonder, the player enters ghost form if you're playing co-op. So you're this fuzzy kind of ghost and you're able to fly through anything, but you're on a time limit. So if your ghost touches a living character or a standee, you'll return to the waking world and reappear. This is basically a more active version of the bubble form respawn mechanic from the other games. So as a ghost, you can fly around and actually chase down your friends if they're trying to leave you behind. It's an adorable concept that also makes ridiculously hard levels like the final trial just a little bit more possible. Now, next over at number 8, Splinter Cell Conviction kind of blew up the stealth formula of the previous games to add more action, and the suits at Ubisoft seem to have locked down two of the most useful mechanics in the game. Last known position and mark and execute turned kind of a slow-paced stealth game into a more fast-paced shooter. Sam Fisher was more of a silent operative, working from the shadows, but in Conviction, you get some John Wick moves. The first one, a more interesting stealth mechanic, is the last known position, where it shows exactly where enemies last spotted Sam. So a silhouette of your position appears, giving you an actual in-game visual representation of where all the bad guys are going to look next. This took a lot of guesswork out of stealth gameplay, and future games in the Assassin's Creed series and a lot of others took full advantage of this pattern. After performing some stealth kills, Sam could then also charge up this whole mark and execute system, giving him this ability to tag enemies and then score a series of instant kill headshots as essentially time stopped. Even that mechanic returned in the latest Ghost Recon games, and it kind of was featured in Star Wars Outlaws. If you own a game mechanic, I guess you might as well take full use of it and put it in all your games, and that seems to be what Ubisoft has been doing.
He'll blow everything! We gotta find Fisher quick!
Now over at number 7, Square Enix, formerly Square, coined an RPG mechanic that's still influencing games in 2024. Active Time Battle, you know, ATB. First designed for Final Fantasy IV way back in the early 90s, ATB became the standard for all Final Fantasy games going forward at that point. Instead of taking strict turns, a timer meter appeared on the screen. Enemies would attack even while you're going through menus, making battles kind of feel more alive, a little bit more unpredictable. It's actually difficult to imagine ATB has lasted so long, but Final Fantasy VII Rebirth kind of has its own ATB function. While you have more direct control of your characters in this remake, you'll charge ATB by waiting or attacking. Attacking charges your meter faster, and you'll be able to unleash powerful arts or magic spells once you've charged 1 or 2 segments of this meter.
I think this might be our chance.
Careful, this thing's already pissed off enough.
So for our money, the ATB system is one of the best. You know, the retro mechanics made games like Final Fantasy VI or Chrono Trigger feel so much more alive. And then Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has some of the best modern JRPG combat systems in games. It's the right mixture of tactical and action that feels difficult but never overwhelming. It totally makes sense why Square Enix patented this gameplay mechanic, and even though the original patent expired a long time ago, I'm sure the suits over there are ready to pounce on anyone trying to use their latest update to the ATB system here. But of course, that's just speculation.
You're done.
Now over at number 6, Sonic, of course, is a franchise that loves its corkscrews. You know, the big loops that the hedgehog can run into and kind of whoosh and speed up? There are loops, and then there are the all-powerful corkscrew ones. And the corkscrew ones were so special, Sega apparently locked these down with its own patent. You might be asking, isn't a patent for a corkscrew animation kind of overkill? That's true. It's also true that when I think of video game corkscrews, I think of Sonic the Hedgehog too. So maybe Sega is onto something here. The actual patent goes into absurd detail on the inner workings of like this fake video game spiral, including an adorable little figure drawing in the patent showing a kind of very crude Sonic sketch turning 360 degrees. The patent expired in 2012, but can you think of any games using this type of corkscrew that aren't basically Sonic games or Sonic fan games? I didn't think so. Now, next over at number 5, sometimes publishers patent game mechanics because they're such good ideas. And sometimes you get right stick targeting in the forgotten PS2 game, Mark of Kree. Remember this one? So before Batman Arkham Asylum, Mark of Kree pushed the PlayStation 2 ahead with free-flowing combat that used the right analog stick to target enemies. After targeting an enemy, a face button symbol would appear over their head. Then you press the matching button to attack. Basically, this simple control scheme gave players a lot of options when fighting groups of enemies. It was a simple and pretty effective type of combat that didn't get truly perfected until the Xbox 360 era with the Arkham games that moved it in a different way. And while we aren't surprised no developers really replicated this weird control scheme, the idea itself wasn't too bad. It's a shame, though, Sony patented this gameplay mechanic. No indie developers or anything like that were able to use right stick targeting, so there. Now over at number 4, here's a patent that's difficult to imagine, but absolutely exists. The Mass Effect dialogue wheel, it's hugely influential in the console-focused RPGs. Or, basically all RPGs and action games or anything that wants to give you dialogue options without sticking to a boring list of options at the bottom of the HUD. BioWare applied for this patent way back in 2007, and it isn't set to expire until 2029. So why do so many games have dialogue wheels? Well, here, it's actually all about the segments. Like we've said before, game companies can't copy mechanics, they can only copy patent ideas. If you change the game mechanic enough to make it distinct, then no one has violated the patent. Lots of games have wheels with dialogue options, but none of those games have highlighted segments. See? Now, they have a plain white wheel with white marks showing you how to select. Only Mass Effect has those distinctive segmented sections of the circle. Here's hoping we can see more of those pie slice things before 2029, but who knows?
Why are you able to break free of his control now? I sealed a part of my mind away from the indoctrination, saving it for a moment when I could help destroy him. It will not last long. We met Shiala on Pharos. She told us about Sovereign's indoctrination.
And down at number 3, if there's one patent that's so against Nintendo's family-friendly image, we have this one. It's the sanity level system from Eternal Darkness. Basically, the crazier you get, the more you kind of lose your mind, the more random events can change your playthrough. In Eternal Darkness, as your protagonist sees more scary stuff, they'll begin to lose it. Enemies will appear invisible for a brief moment, the game might reset with like a kind of fake bug to trick you, or more enemies than usual can appear. There are a lot of different sanity effects, and they're all technically exclusive Nintendo ideas. Do not steal. The sanity level patent has a hilarious detail, actually, if you take a closer look. The required figure drawings actually show the sanity level example in a game that actually looks much more like a Legend of Zelda sequel. Can you imagine, like, Link going crazy from being stuck in a dungeon? I can't. Now, down at number 2, Nintendo isn't the only company suing over video game mechanic patents. Sega targeted competitor Vivendi Universal and successfully sued, and it was all over a giant pointer, a big-ass arrow. In Sega's Crazy Taxi, this big pointer would appear after picking up your last passenger. Before the time limit expired, you needed to rush around, dropping off passengers and earning as much cash as possible. And a big part of that navigation to your next point was the big pointer. Not only was the pointer a big part of the patent, but also the giant cone of light showing the player where to go next. It's all part of the Crazy Taxi experience we remember from visiting arcades in the mid-2000s. The Simpsons Hit and Run is one of the best Simpsons games, and a game that totally lifted its entire gameplay style straight from Crazy Taxi. Normally, that sort of thing isn't really a problem in the Wild West of video game development. We all see copycat stuff, but publisher Vivendi actually had to settle out of court with Sega over this patent breach. It seems like plenty of games can get away with giant pointers, but if you try to put a big pointer showing where you go in a driving game like Crazy Taxi, you might just fall for Sega's trap. Now finally, at number 1, let's end on a legendary gameplay mechanic that's also so unique, I actually can't really imagine another game trying to steal it. Yeah, the madmen at Namco patented rolling up junk in a giant ball. Yes, from Katamari Damacy. The technical description of this whimsical gameplay style is a tongue twister, and I quote, "arranging a plurality of objects comprising a plurality of objects to be stuck." It's basically a really specific lawyerly way of saying what the game is about, rolling a big ball around and collecting stuff to then make that ball bigger. And this is probably the most quirky patent yet because there are multiple figures showing the character as this tiny figure rolling around a three-dimensional environment. There are figures showing the ball of junk growing a bit bigger, and then there's even details in the patent about growing in size so you can access new areas of the map in tiers. It's almost unbelievable Namco would patent something so bizarre and so specific. And that's 15 gameplay mechanics that have been patented, and maybe you can't use because developers or publishers will sue the pants off you. There are so many other things we wanted to talk about, and this is a tricky subject, so let us know what you think in the comments. If you like this video and you like talking games with us, clicking the like button's all you gotta do. It really helps us out. And if you're new, consider subscribing, maybe hitting that notification bell because we put out new videos every single day. Either way, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.